My world is made of sound. Not in the way people talk about music or laughter. For me, sound is data. Frequencies, peaks and valleys on a screen. Decibels to be tamed, to be controlled. I'm a sound engineer. My ears are both a gift and a curse. That's why I loved my apartment. It was the top floor of an old brownstone in Park Slope, Brooklyn, a massive, almost studio space with exposed brick and ancient oak floors. The ceilings were high, they swallowed every echo. This was my fortress, a fortress against the noise of New York City. The double-paned windows were thick. The expensive Persian rugs weren't for decoration. They were sound traps. My workspace was an altar of technology. Yamaha monitors, a giant curved screen, and at the center of it all, my Beyerdynamic headphones. When I put them on, the world disappeared. It started small, so small. It was a Tuesday night, around 2 in the morning. I had just finished mastering a track for some car commercial. I took off my headphones. The silence of the apartment washed over me. No, not true silence. There was always the ambient noise, the soft hiss of the radiator, the low hum of the refrigerator, the nearly inaudible tick of a wall clock. I knew these sounds. I'd catalogued them, filtered them out of my consciousness, but that night, there was something else. A scuttling sound, faint, like the claws of a mouse. It came from the wall I shared with the next building. A mouse, I thought. A minor annoyance. I'd call the superintendent tomorrow. I shrugged, went to the kitchen for a glass of water. A few nights later, it happened again. This time, it wasn't a mouse. It was deeper. A low, long scratching, as if someone was dragging a piece of cardboard along the inside of the wall. I stood still. Head tilted, listening. The sound stopped. I waited, holding my breath. Nothing. It must be the pipes, I told myself. This building is old. Sal, the super, had told me so, but I couldn't get used to inconsistent data. A week passed. The small incidents began to accumulate. One morning, I could have sworn the expensive coffee I bought was lower than it should be. I shook my head, told myself I was being ridiculous. Who breaks in to steal a single scoop of coffee? Then there were the books. I have a collection, meticulously arranged in alphabetical order. One day, I noticed a single volume was out of alignment by a few millimeters. My fingers brushed the spine, pushing it back into place. A shiver of wrongness went down my spine. It was the kind of tiny detail that no one, absolutely no one, but me would notice. I must have bumped it myself. Yes, that was the only logical explanation. That logic began to crack on a Friday night. I was watching a movie, the surround sound perfectly calibrated. In the middle of a quiet scene, I heard it. Not from the walls this time, it was in the room. A creak. Not the familiar creak of my own weight on the floorboards. This came from near the attic, a small, dusty space above the bathroom that I never used. The sound was definite, weighted. I told myself it was the neighbor's cat. It probably got onto the roof. I turned the volume up on the movie. The real trigger came on Sunday morning. I stepped into the bathroom, steam still hanging in the air. I looked in the mirror, and I saw it, a hair, long, black, and curly. It was stuck to the white tile of the shower wall. My hair is sandy brown and cut short. I live alone. I haven't had anyone stay the night in over 6 months. I just stood there, staring at the hair. It was a flaw in a perfect surface, an impossible piece of data. I picked it up carefully with 2 fingers. Its greasy texture made my skin crawl. I held it up to the light, and then I flushed it down the toilet. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, listening. I heard my own breathing, my own heartbeat. I heard the hiss of the radiator, the hum of the fridge, and then I heard it. A breath. It wasn't mine. It was impossibly faint, almost lost in the white noise of the room. A slow, steady inhale and a long, slow exhale. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at all. Maybe the air vents. I sat bolt upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. I listened desperately, and the breathing stopped, as if it knew I was listening. The room was silent again, but now It wasn't a peaceful silence, it was the silence of a held breath. I realized a horrifying truth. I was not alone in my fortress, and worse, I had no idea how long it, or he, had been here. The next week was torture. My paranoia grew like mold. I started performing small rituals, checking the door lock 3 times, sprinkling a thin layer of flour in front of the doorway, placing single strands of my own hair across drawer openings. Nothing. The flour was undisturbed, the hairs were unmoved, but the feeling of being invaded was still there, thick as the air before a storm. A smell started. It was subtle, a sour, faintly musty odor, the smell of an unwashed body and stale air. I smelled it strongest when I opened my hall closet. I pulled everything out, checked every corner, found nothing. The smell lingered. An invisible reminder. My sister, Sarah, told me I was overworked. She told me to get out more. She didn't understand. No one could. I wasn't crazy. I knew no one would believe me. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. That's when I decided to use my own weapons. I spent almost $2,000 on Amazon, contact microphones, shotgun mics, a new 8-channel preamp. That night, my apartment became a bizarre recording studio. I taped mics to the walls, to the floor, to the closet door. Black cables snaked across the floorboards, all leading back to my command center. I put on my headphones, I hit record, and I waited. For the first hour, there was nothing but the familiar sounds of the building, now horribly amplified. The water in the pipes sounded like an underground river. The radiator hissed like a dying beast. I was starting to feel ridiculous. And then, on track 3, the microphone on the wall behind my bed, a spike in the waveform, a scratch, very quiet. Kirk. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen. A few seconds later, it came again. Kirk, Kirk, as if someone was testing their fingernails against the plaster. Then, on track 6, the microphone aimed at the attic hatch. Another sound, a soft metallic groan, the sound of a rusty hinge moving with infinite care. The blood went cold in my veins. I didn't move. I just listened, my eyes scanning the 8 tracks that were recording the horrible symphony of my home. Next came a rustle from the microphone near the closet. The sound of rough fabric against wood, the sound of a body shifting, trying to be silent. I recorded all night. By morning, I had nearly 8 hours of data. I spent the entire next day analyzing it. What I found was worse than I had imagined. I heard footsteps, impossibly light, the sound of someone crawling, keeping their weight low to the floor. I could trace the path from the attic, through the space behind the bathroom wall, to the closet. I heard my refrigerator door open around 4 in the morning. I heard the pages of a book being turned. And the worst part, around 3 a.m. when my own breathing was deepest, the microphone next to my bed picked it up, the breathing, clear, unmistakable, and mixed with it, a whisper, words too garbled to make out, like a distorted prayer. I looped the audio again and again, running it through noise reduction filters. Finally, the words emerged, faint but clear. Sleep well, sleep well, sleep well. I ripped the headphones from my head, throwing them on the desk. I was gasping for air, cold sweat on my forehead. It wasn't just living in my home, it was watching me. It was talking to me when I was most vulnerable. I grabbed the phone, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. "There's someone in my house," I stammered. "In the walls." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Sir, can you be more specific?" "He's living in the walls. I have proof. I have recordings." 2 police officers arrived. They looked tired and skeptical. I tried to explain, showing them the microphones, playing the audio. They exchanged a look. A barely perceptible glance. "Sir," the older one said, "we've checked the perimeter. Your doors and windows are secure. There's no sign of a break-in. But the recordings," I pleaded. "Honestly, sir, it just sounds like old pipes to us. Maybe you should get some rest." They left, leaving me alone with my horrifying truth. No one believed me. No one could help me. I looked around my apartment, my sanctuary, now a living tomb. The walls seemed to be closing in, and the silence was now just the promise of more sounds to come. They thought I was crazy.